I've got you on YouTube.
Okay.
That's cool. That's great. I'm learning. I'm getting there. I'm even learning time zones. I had such a hard time with this originally. Like my first chat with, I think my first overseas guest was, oh God, who was it? Lloyd? I think it was Lloyd. And I thought he was on at 3 p.m. my time. I thought, holy crap, it can't be like, it can't be like 3 p.m. his time because it's the middle of the day. But
Yeah, I think the only way to do these things is to work off of Greenwich Mean Time and just decide what day and what time to do
yeah,
it, because
I'm
otherwise
getting
it's too.
I'm getting good at that now. I'm working out the GMT and the EST and the BST. I didn't know there was a BST until
What's
Steve
that?
Parsons told me. That's the one time zone for Britain is BST apparently.
Oh, all right.
It's
Well,
British summertime or something.
huh.
And we're AEST, and yeah, I'm working around those, and I'm getting there. That World Clock app is handy, actually. I've got two now, but that's handy. But yeah, childhood. Where did you grow up? Where have you lived? And
So yeah, my father was he was a car salesman, and so he traveled a little bit as far as moving around, and we
yeah,
ended up landing in Austin, Texas when I was 4, and so
yeah,
I grew up in and around Austin, and uh, I I did that till I was in 5th grade in Austin, and
yeah,
my brother Bill, who was 12 years older than me. Um, was he 12 years older than me? Yeah, he's 12 years older than me. Would take me out on his motorcycle. I was like 5 years old. He was 17. And he would
yeah.
put me on the gas tank of his motorcycle with no helmet or anything. And we'd go riding around out in the country. And, and he would look for abandoned buildings and
Yeah,
graveyards and just weird things. And we would go look at that. So he kind of got me into doing all this stuff.
yeah. And you
And go ahead.
and your brother too. You spoke a lot about your brother and his influence on you growing up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, it was, huge.
sounds like you would have been a great guy.
Yeah, he got me into skydiving, he got me into music, he got me into ghost hunting.
Yeah,
He did all that without really knowing it. He just
wow.
kinda did what he was doing, and I kinda followed along with what he was doing, so
Yeah.
and in junior high, I would go and basically do that with my friends, and, back then, this wasn't a thing. The only TV show that was on was maybe, Kolchak or,
Oh, the Night Stalker.
yeah,
The
there
Night
wasn't.
Stalker. I've heard of that. Hang on, that's so sorry. I hit the sample comment just to see if it was working. You go ahead. Go
there
ahead.
there there
Yeah, Colts.
wasn't
Love that.
yeah, there wasn't, very many, TV shows or anything, so ghost hunting really wasn't a thing back then,
Yes. Now,
and then
how long have you been in this for? And yeah, when did your first interest get sparked? I should say, like, what age were you?
well, I was doing ghost hunting when I was, probably in 5th grade, I guess. There was
Holy
um
crap!
yeah,
Wow.
there was a graveyard real close to my house, and me and my friends would go over there and, um, just play around and look for ghosts in the graveyard. We didn't know what we were
Well,
doing. What's that?
yeah. No, I was just saying, wow. I mean, for me, it was age 5, of course, as you know. But yeah, that's great. Now, did anything happen in anywhere that you'd lived? Like, have you lived in any old houses, and did weird stuff happen to you or your family? Or, and you've got to tell me again about the story in the cow in the church because I love that. I can't help myself. I read
Yeah,
that first in your book, of course. But yeah,
yeah.
how did anything weird happen anywhere you've lived?
So in the houses that we lived, we were always pretty much typically in a new house,
Yeah,
and nothing really happened. We were very Catholic at the time,
yeah,
so um, no, nothing. It was me away from the house, and
yeah,
I had a lot of interesting dreams when I was a kid, which got me interested in you know studying and understanding dream life, I guess.
yeah.
But not really. I had a A Firebird experience, which in Texas, the indigenous people in the United
What's the
States,
tribe? What's the tribe called there?
there's about a hundred
There are
different
two.
ones.
There are, oh yeah, God, what's the ones in Texas called? Or is there like hundreds of different ones of
Yeah,
them?
there's a lot of different ones. There's the Karankawa, there's the
Wow,
Tonkawa, the um, Comanche, the Apache came through.
wow,
Um, yeah, no, there's I don't know how many are in Texas, but there is a whole bunch.
wow,
Yeah. So
wow,
they believe in a lot of spirit animals. And when I was a little kid, I was walking across the street, and a giant bird, which in my perception, his wingspan was as from one side of the street to the other.
wow,
So it was
wow.
really very large. And, I freaked out, and it swooped down toward me. And I took off running, and I went and told my mom, and my mom was like, "Oh, hurry up and get ready. It's almost supper time." Like, "Oh, there's this giant bird." Uh, and
Good God. Wow, that's fascinating. Is that meant to be a good luck or a bad luck thing, a Firebird? Are they a guardian or a totem, a good luck? Or I know they have trickster spirits and everything, and is that a good luck one or a bad luck? I'm not too familiar with all of that yet.
yeah, so it
You know,
depends
I'm
on
a big fan.
what's that?
I said I'm a big fan, but yeah, go ahead. We've got one viewer here. Yeah, go ahead.
So it depends. It depends on your
Yeah,
perception on how people see them. That typically the Thunderbird is not anything evil, but it would be an interaction or an experience with somebody that very relatable to what they're experiencing at the time. I guess is
okay.
what it would be.
Yeah,
And the thing about it is there's a lot of buzzards, a lot of what are we call buzzards in Texas, or vultures. So they're quite big.
I love them actually. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, they have they can have a 4 to 6 foot wingspan.
Yes.
And then I didn't know it at the time, but there were some bald eagles that were actually nesting about 20 miles from where we live. They still nest in that area, which is
Yes.
very kind of rare for Texas to have bald eagles there. So it could have been one of those two, but
Yes. But as a
um,
kid, I mean, you were only young, so I think that to a kid, it changes a lot of stuff, I guess,
right,
A giant
right.
yellow flaming bird looks like a giant yellow flaming bird, so you wouldn't know what it is.
He wasn't flaming at the time, but he sure did scare the hell
Well,
out of me.
now that leads me to your careers. Have you experienced, or did you or any of your crew experience anything in the Army, Navy, Air Force? Because you've done all three of those.
Right.
And in police as well.
Yes. Yeah. In the Army, I was with a rapid deployment unit, the 82nd Airborne Division. So we got deployed quite often, and I was with the Army. I was down in Central America, Alaska, and the Middle East. And in each place has its own unique kind of things. When I
Yes.
was up in Alaska. There were several soldiers that I was deployed with, and we would be deployed in places that no one else had ever gone to. Right.
Yes. Wow.
What they would do with the airborne unit there? There's only one airborne unit at the time up there, and they would send us out every time all the other units would go in the field, and we would
Yeah.
go in. We would go parachute in first, set
Yeah.
up a landing zone for them, and then they would come in. And then we would also do surveys for the Department of the Army and Department of Defense, because they were worried about Russia invading Alaska over the Bering Sea in the
Yeah.
wintertime. Whenever it froze, you could just drive right across. And so
Wow.
they would send us out to some very remote locations
Yeah.
and do surveys of those locations to determine how the Russians would go through. So we were in areas that no human beings probably have ever even been in.
And
And
Alaska's like basically a huge desert, isn't it? There's really there's not a lot in some areas. And Now,
Well,
could you explain the geography of Alaska to us over here?
yeah, some areas is what would be considered tundra, what you would look at as, yeah, as just frozen wasteland. But when that
Yeah.
thaws out, there's what's called breakup in Alaska, which all the ice
Yes.
breaks up and melts out. In
Yes.
those areas, they're actually very green. It's called muskeg, is what it is. It's not a grass. It's like a moss, but they grow in these big round clumps
I think I
underneath.
said muskeg, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
underneath the ice caps, they grow that way. And so there's those areas. There's a very mountainous areas with huge, 100-foot trees, and then there's regular nice farming areas that in the um, I'm trying to think of the valley that's in there. It's the Matanuska Valley is the big farming valley up in that area. But yeah,
Yeah.
it has a very diverse area uh, of uh, of different type of terrain, different type of vegetation, and stuff like that.
Wow.
And so I had some of the soldiers that I was with. I can think of three that reported thinking that they saw
Yeah.
hairy men, what we call hairy men. Uh,
Airymen, like a Sasquatch or we call them a Yowie or and of course Bigfoot. And
right. Up there, they're Nantinooks or Tornets.
Antinuk.
Yeah,
That's a cool
Nantinooks.
word.
Yeah. Yeah, or
Yeah. Wow.
they're called a tornet or hairy men. And the 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 Aleut and the Inuit peoples up in that area have stories about the fact that their peoples used to interact with the hairy men. The hairy men did not possess a language, but were kind, and they would trade with each other.
Yes.
But one of the hairy men, a young, like a teenage hairy man, tried to steal a kayak from one of the tribes, and another young man from the tribe ended up killing that young hairy man. And
Oh,
at that point, the hairy man then disappeared into the woods
oh.
and
Well, any
completely.
wonder?
What's
Any
that?
wonder? Any wonder if
Yeah,
any wonder they disappeared? Yeah.
yeah, and they just they kind of cut off any kind of
Yeah.
interaction with humans, and that was the separation between quote unquote the Sasquatch or Bigfoot type creatures and humans.
Oh, that's sad. That's really sad. Now, have you experienced UAPs? Um, unidentified aerial phenomena or UFO phenomena. Have you seen one of those, or have you seen other cryptids or anything like that, or ghosts, of course, or have you felt ghosts or anything anywhere you've been? I should say.
So I have never seen a ghost.
Yes.
I've seen UAPs.
Yes.
Um, I've
Wow.
I've ex-
Whereabouts? Whereabouts? Was it on the ocean?
yes, yeah.
Yes.
So that was when I was in the Navy. I was assigned to the USS Nimitz. I worked what's called air detection and tracking, and we would catch UAP. What's people would consider UAPs coming out when we were on the Pacific coast, coming out close to Alaska, across Canada, on the
Yeah.
coast of
Yeah.
Washington, Oregon, Northern California, and then they would disappear around Catalina Island. And
Wow.
so and the funny thing is there's a lot of people that have seen, not using radar, but just using eyesight, these lights that go into the water at Catalina Island. So to me, that pretty much correlates a lot of what people are seeing and experiencing. Is we
Wow.
have U.S. military, equipment picking up these types of phenomena in the air, and then you have people on the ground that are actually reporting it. So yeah, yep,
I mean, they have a name for them. I never knew that until a few years back. That they called them Foo Fighters, and that's where the band got their name.
right,
Good band, by the way. Great band.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, leading from that, Values, assumptions, beliefs, expectations. That's one thing that really struck me about your book. I mean, I've got that sitting here with me. Could you explain those? How do we interpret our experiences, and how do those translate our experiences?
Sure. The the thing about people, the thing about people's experience is we're taking in our experience using our eyes, our ears, our
Yes,
nose. You know, we're experiencing the world that way.
yes.
And everyone needs to understand that. Like when I look at the camera right now, um,
Wow,
I
that's a great
don't.
camera.
What's that?
That's a great camera. You've got a really sharp outline. That's great.
So
Sorry,
when I
into this.
look at my camera and my computer now, um, technically I don't really see it. My
Yes,
eyes are not the windows to my soul. They're not. It's not like
yes,
a movie being projected on the back of my brain and I see it.
yes,
I'm actually my eyes are just organs that are picking up these light reflections in the visual spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum,
yeah,
and they're bouncing off of whatever it is in front of me and
yeah,
reflecting into my eyes. Then my eyes then turn them into electrical and chemical responses that go to the back of the brain. And the back of my brain then receives that and creates what I believe I see. My
yes,
camera. So this stuff, my microphone might really look like this, but
yes.
maybe it doesn't. Maybe my brain is just interpreting the best it can what I'm experiencing in front of me. I
It's the way you perceive things.
Yeah, we all agree that this is white and the foam thing is black and my shirt is
Yes,
black.
yes,
But we may be seeing them very differently. It's just that visual spectrum, the way that
yes,
our brain interprets it, we
yes,
agree that that particular spectrum portion is black.
yes. And I guess
So
that, yes,
y- you're
yes,
taking in this information, and you interpret it and replace that information and these being acts and what people do and see and say are based on you relate them to your values that you have when you're growing up. So those values, assumptions, beliefs, and expectations, those
yes.
VABES,
Waves.
um,
Good acronym. I like it.
are very related to your own world, your own experience.
Yes.
So when I go into a haunted place, or let's say someone gets online and they
Yes.
read that this cemetery is haunted by ghosts,
Mhm.
and it's haunted by a ghost that was a witch that was hung in a tree near the cemetery and was buried there at that cemetery. So they'll read that and then they will go to that cemetery, and
Yes.
their assumption is if it's haunted, they're going to see a witch ghost of some sort.
Yes. Of
And
course.
they will
You
look
would expect.
around and yeah, they will look around and look for
Yes.
the biggest, oldest tree and assume that, oh, they probably hung her from that tree. So
Yeah.
they'll build this narrative based on their assumptions. And
Yes.
when you're talking about beliefs, like I was raised Catholic, so it was natural for me to, okay, there's a God, there's Jesus, there's the Holy Spirit, and then
Yes.
there's all of these saints that have died and become these conduits to God, according to Catholic belief. There is what's called transubstantiation of the Eucharist. The Catholics call it the mystery of the Eucharist, and it's when the
Ah,
priest
yeah.
stands above the altar and prays over the wine and over the
And
bread.
the wafer
And,
or yeah, the wafer or the bread, I was gonna say.
yeah.
Because we have wafers. We used to have wafers over. Well, I don't know if you guys do, but yeah, I was Christian spiritualist, so we had wafers when I was a kid in the church.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
go on.
So the Catholic priest will stand and bless the wine and the
Yes,
bread, and in their belief system, that wine actually becomes the blood of Jesus Christ, and
yes,
the bread actually becomes the flesh of him.
yes,
And
yes.
everybody that's watching will go, well, no, it's not blood, that's wine, and that's not bread. I mean, that's not flesh, that's bread. But that's part of
Yes.
the transubstantiation is it doesn't look that way to us, but that's what it is. And that's where
Yes.
your belief systems come in, and those belief systems will cloud your regular experience in life. And you'll have all kinds of expectations of, whether or not you get along with somebody, you go someplace. And I was raised very, very proper. And I would say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, open the door for people, stuff like that. Well, nowadays, if you do that, people will be rude to you intentionally in the United States. Um,
I know. It's sad.
yeah, and so God bless them. you know,
I'll call
and
people out for not standing up on the bus or anything. It's
yeah,
rude.
and
Yeah, it's
and
not. It's not. Yeah, go on.
no, just the all those expectations that you carry that baggage with you wherever you go, and you start doing your investigation. And if you allow those assumptions, beliefs, and expectations to influence your investigation, it can become very cloudy.
Yeah, now that's really important, I guess, to be aware of yourself, to be aware of how those might affect you. And that leads in, I guess, to the story about the church and the cow. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to hear it again. It's gonna make me laugh, but I love it.
Yeah.
I've been
So,
babbling about I've been babbling about your book for years.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It was on my reading top of my one of the top of my list years ago when I first got it. When did you first publish Detecting Paranormal?
yeah. Well, thank you. So that was one of my first quote unquote, I guess, investigations in the paranormal. Like I said, I was probably 16 or 17 years old when this happened. Uh, Up until that time, I had been running around in in graveyards. I've been running around in abandoned houses and things like that. But in this particular experience, um, three other friends of mine, Joe Cox, Mike Crawley, and Robert Pounders, we all decided to go out to the abandoned church out at a graveyard way out in the country in Texas. And it's on the backside of a big area that has open pit coal mines. So it's kind of a relatively flat area, but they've dug up all these mines. And so they created these big hills all
Yeah.
around this particular road and church and graveyard. So
Yeah.
we went out there for Halloween and drove out, and we got snacks and beer and cigarettes, and we all went out there. And the side of this church it was all boarded up, but the side of the church, if you pulled back the board, you could get into the door and go inside. And it literally looked like people had abandoned it probably in the 1940s and just never came back. There was still an old piano in there. The church
Wow.
pews were all in there. The altar was there and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so we go in and we set up our sleeping bags there on the altar, and we're just hanging out, drinking beer, smoking cigarettes in the church.
Yeah.
Very, very sacrilegious, but we weren't being overtly rude
Yeah.
to the
You weren't
church.
trashing the place or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
uh, and so Joe had brought a book that had a bunch of ghost stories and like stuff. I always say it was the Necronomicon. He was reading the Necronomicon in there, but it was, I don't remember what kind of book it was, but it's some book on spiritual ghosts and monsters and stuff. And
Yeah.
so it got really late, and Mike Crawley went to sleep, and Robert Pounders went to sleep, and Joe Cox was sitting there reading this book.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the whole church kind of made this groaning sound, this big creaking sound. And then there was dust coming down from the ceiling rafters. And we kind of stopped, and then Joe continued on the story, and then it did it again. This time, the whole church seemed to alter. The wall kind of bent in on one side, and it creaked really loud. And I was like, stop reading, man. Don't read anymore. And and it did it again. And I was like, it was very dark in there. We had some candles and maybe a flashlight.
Yeah.
And I was looking around. I was like, well, there's nothing inside the church that's doing that. Something has to be outside the church. So I go over to that door and I open it up, but it opens to the inside and it's got that piece of plywood over it. So I had to push that plywood out, and I'm kind of leaning out, but it's really dark outside. And there was a moon and some clouds, and I had my flashlight, and I kept looking, peering,
Yeah.
more and more around the corner, and I saw this thing out there. It was real close to the church. It was big, and I leaned out a little more, and I got more of my flashlight on. It was a really huge cow rubbing his butt up against the tree.
I love it though. I mean, it's a great example of how, I mean, you thought there might be a ghost there. It was old and it might be haunted. And it's a great
Right.
example. Now, where else have you been in your world travel? I mean, you've been everywhere but here.
Yeah, I know, right? That's true. I've been on every
That
continent except for
sucks.
Antarctica and Australia. When I was in the
Yeah,
Navy, we drove by Australia twice, when I was on Nimitz, and we were supposed to pull into Hobart, but they were doing protest against nuclear carriers, so they didn't allow us to go in. If it was a regular Navy ship, they would have allowed us to go in, but because it was nuclear powered, they didn't allow it. And I get it,
yeah,
I understand that, but it was a great disappointment. Um,
yeah,
but so yeah, one of the most amazing places I've been is to Romania. Lynn and
yeah,
I went to Romania with Dave Schrader a few years ago, and Brad Blair and some other investigators, and we kind of
yeah,
went on the trail of Vlad the Impaler. We went from where Dracula was born to where he went to school to where he got sent into the military to where he was incarcerated by another. They kept him in a prison, uh,
yeah,
to where he went to several of his battles and his castle, Poneri Castle, and then to his where he is supposed to, rumored to have been buried. So
well,
that was an absolutely amazing trip. That was all organized by Dave Schrader, and that was kind of like a dark tourism kind of thing. We didn't get
wow,
too much time at the locations. The longest we had was at Hunadora Castle, also known as Corvin Castle, and we were there all night long for a ghost hunt there. And that was pretty amazing. I didn't experience anything there, but I thought I did. I was
yes,
wearing a some night vision goggles and a camera, and I was walking through a wall. There's like a siege wall on the outside of the castle, and
wow,
inside the siege wall is a lifted scaffold kind of thing, that you can walk back and forth from the two towers. And as I was walking back from there, I saw this glowing object up in a window,
yeah.
and I was getting closer and closer to it. And it was very exciting. I was like, oh my god, this is it, this is gonna happen.
This is
It
it.
was Lynn sleeping in the window. She had
Ah,
crawled up. It was a big window, and she had crawled up in the window and gone to sleep. Yeah. And
now, have you had anything else happen anywhere else? I mean, you've felt things, I guess, or heard things, or what has been some of your really stuff that you can't explain, stuff that you can't rule out as being paranormal phenomena.
yeah, so
And where has it happened, I should say. Sorry, so
okay.
throaty throat. Go ahead.
So
Sorry.
my stuff is my experiences have been much more metaphysical type thing,
Yes.
very much more a feeling or a desire kind of thing.
Yes.
When I was in Alaska, I had gone through a pararescue unit or a pararescue school in Kodiak, Alaska. So I was down there for about 3 weeks, and we spent probably about half our time in the water. So we
Yes.
were doing a lot of swimming, very cold. We were using wetsuits and dry suits, and the U.S. Coast Guard was doing helicopter operations with us and stuff like that. It was about two
Yeah.
weeks long, and on the weekends while I was down there, I went to the Kodiak Historical Society. They have a little building there, and I went in and read about all the Russian occupation in the
Yes.
17 and 1800s in Alaska. And I
Yes.
found a couple of places I would really like to visit. And there was one, it was called Refuge Rock. And it is in a very obscure part of Alaska, very hard to get to. And I thought, man, I would really like to go there. I want to go there. And what had
What's the history
happened?
around that? What's the history around that?
So what had happened is a bunch of the indigenous tribes that live in that area, a lot of the people from the indigenous tribe that lives in that area would be attacked by other tribes. So they would
Yeah.
go to a place called Refuge Rock, which is about
Yeah.
300 yards offshore of a island called Sitkaladak Island. And Refuge Rock is just a big rock that sticks out of the ground or out of the water. And it's got a flat top to it. So if you got on top of that, no one could siege you from there. No one could take you over because the water's too cold and the cliffs are too high to really do much. Uh,
Yeah.
but the indigenous population there didn't understand gunpowder and cannons, and so when a group of Russian traders, Russian fur traders, came in, they wanted to capture all of these indigenous people as slaves.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
they had chased them, and all of them had gone to Refuge Rock, and they got on
yeah.
top of Refuge Rock. Well, the Russians took two of their ships and just uh, anchored on either side of the or not anchored, but they operated on either side of the island and just shot cannon in there and killed anywhere from 200 to 2,000 of these people, and then
Yeah.
captured the rest of them. And a Dutch explorer in the late 1700s actually went to that area and talked to some of the people that actually survived that siege and told the story of what happened there. And you can look it up
Yeah.
online, Refuge
Yeah.
at Kaladak Island.
I
And
will now. What happened to you there?
so the last day, I left the class. We finished our class, and I went to a little airport on Kodiak. Um, in Alaska back then, I call them Alaskan Ubers, even though they didn't have Ubers back in the 1980s. But the Alaskan Uber is the least drunk guy at the airport that will fly you someplace in his private plane. So I paid this guy, I think $40 or $60 to fly me to Old Harbor. I
Yeah.
got out in Old Harbor, and that was very bizarre because there's a Russian Orthodox church there in Old
Yeah.
Harbor, and Old Harbor is literally nothing. You can look up Old
Yeah.
Harbor on Google Earth and take a look
Yeah.
at it, and the church is probably still there. And so I went
Yeah.
there and I stayed at the Bates Motel.
Oh, the actual one from Psycho.
Yeah, it was a
Is there
really
actually a real one?
yeah, it was a really bad hotel, motel, I should say. And then the
Yeah.
next day, I met with some fishermen that agreed to take me to Sitkaladak Island and drop me off on their way out. And then I
Yeah.
had to hike about 5 miles across the island to get to Refuge Rock.
Yeah.
Now, this whole time, this seems like a lot of ridiculous stuff to do for just to go look at this island. And that was the thing about it. And what I said earlier, as far as metaphysical, I didn't just want to go see the island. I had to go see the island. It
Yeah.
was something more than that. Um, I was
Yeah.
drawn to do this. I wasn't
Yeah.
consciously just doing it. I mean, I was doing it. There wasn't anything that was
Yeah.
going to stop me from not
Yeah.
doing it. And so when I got there, like I said, it's about 300 yards, and I could tell that there's like a little underwater, you know, when the tide is all the way
Yeah.
down, you
Yeah.
could actually almost walk out there. And
Wow.
so I could see that these people had dug like a quarry behind one side
Yeah.
and dumped that sand in those rocks in the water to create this little underwater bridge over there. And so
Wow.
I put my stuff down. I decided I would go swim to the island. And I got about I'd not swim, walk, but I got about to a little above my waist,
Yeah.
and I got so kind of concerned being by myself and the different types of animals that are in the water, and it was so
Yeah.
cold,
Oh God.
and I
Yeah.
lost my nerve, and I turned around and went back. But it's not something that I can really explain to people because I failed at what I was supposed to do. That was
Well,
calling for me to go visit that island for whatever reason. I don't know what that was, but it was something of a higher calling kind of thing, a rite of passage or something.
yeah.
And
But
I
would you go back there again though? I mean, would you
absolutely,
go visit?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's now a World Heritage site, and you can't get on the property because there's so many. So I mean, literally, those people were massacred there, and they just left them there. So all of their bones, all of their furs, everything that they were wearing are still just scattered on top of the rock.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, God. Now, I was going to say go ahead with the rest of the story, but then I was going to say, where else have you been, and what have you seen? And good Lord.
um, so that was basically it. I turned around and I went back and I, did a clothes change, made a fire, sat by the fire for a little while, and then it was time for me to hike back over and to catch my the fishermen back in. It was really
Yeah.
funny when they took me out there. The guy that had the boat, it's a big
Yeah.
fishing boat, and he's like, "So do you have a gun?" I was like, "No, I don't have a
No.
gun." And he goes, "There's bear out here, and there's
Oh,
nothing to
no.
eat." And I'm like, "Well, I guess I'll."
Oh, no.
He thought I was a damn idiot for not going out there with a gun, but I didn't see any bear while I was out there.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why that chain of islands or those bears are called Kodiak bears is because that's where they live. So
Well,
I think I was 19. I was
are they black
19.
or brown ones, the Kodiak ones?
Brown. They're
Brown.
very, very big. They're the big ones in brown.
Are they aggressive or shy? I mean, we don't have bears over here except koala bears, but they're not really bears. But anyway,
They are very aggressive. Yeah.
wow. Okay, well, I wouldn't want to meet one of those. So where else have you been? Hospitals, asylums. You did Asylum 49.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right.
Where's Coleman's favorite place? Or one of
Yeah.
his?
Yeah. Yeah, Asylum 49 was a lot of fun. We did that, 2 weekends ago. I was up there with Richard Estep. His new TV show just dropped 2 weeks ago called Paranormal Revenge. He's also on Haunted Hospitals and Paranormal Caught on Camera, I think, and a couple of others. Paranormal State, maybe. He's been on a bunch of different shows. But
Yeah,
we got
well,
to go out there and help with the Halloween haunted house that they do there. And then we did an investigation with VIPs that came in. So we helped take the VIPs through and do the investigation with them. That was a lot of fun. But we jumped in Richard's truck and drove 14 hours down to Tombstone, and
wow,
then spent 4 days in Tombstone investigating the OK Corral, the
wow,
the gunfight that the Earps and the Clantons had.
wow.
Um, the OK Corral. Did I say Clantons? Not no
Um,
no no no. The Earps and the other guys.
uh,
Uh, I,
I
I
can't remember.
forget. Anyway,
I have the coffee's not quite hit me enough yet, but yeah, go ahead.
and then we went over to Boot Hill, the graveyard there. That's a pretty famous graveyard,
Yes, I've heard.
and then we did it's called the Tough Nut Mine, and we did an investigation down there of possible cave-ins that the miners died while they were in there. So that was very
Yeah.
interesting. And while we were doing all that, we were doing EVP work
Yes.
and using the Estes method with a spirit box. We did
Yes, the SB7, the GAN's filled with the SB7 thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I used to use that. I used to use the actual ping pong balls, and I had my former partner paint them red. So,
right.
the cut in half ones. But yeah, they're great, those. You love experiments too, I guess.
So I do some. whenever I'm investigating with a large group, I never seem to
Yes.
get much of anything.
Yeah.
I seem to have my best experiences while I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And so, there were some interesting things that came up during our investigation of the Tough Nut mine. There was a good EVP at the Boot Hill Cemetery, and yeah, so that was interesting. But you had asked as far as other places. Lep Castle is probably my favorite place. If I could, if
Ireland. Yes. That's Ireland? Lep Castle?
Lep Castle, that's right. It's in Ireland.
Yeah.
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 And so I was there. Actually, I was with Dave Schrader again on this one. And
Yeah.
we were up in the Bloody Chapel, which has a
Yeah.
great history on that. And we were up there for a few hours with, I
Yeah.
usually just use audio and video. I typically don't do too many other experiments unless it's
Yeah.
having something to
And
do
notebook, blah de blah.
outside.
Yeah.
What's that?
Notebook as well, writing stuff down and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. So what happened there?
And so after we were up in the Bloody Chapel, didn't seem to get much. We went down to the second floor. There's supposed to be a red woman dressed in all red down there. We spent a couple of hours there, didn't get anything. We talked
Yeah.
to the owners, Sean and Ann, had a good talk with them. And then as we were leaving, we turned around and one of the people that was with us, Tammy, took a picture of the front of Lep Castle. And we said goodbye and we left. And a couple of weeks later, Tammy sent the picture out to everybody, said, "Hey, I just looked at my picture I took at Lep. Look at this." And you see Sean and Ann standing at the front door, but in the
Yeah.
window above them, there's a priest standing at the window looking out.
Have you got a screen? I can let you present stuff if you want. I've got
Yeah,
this little button down here. It should work.
I got it right here, I
I
think.
can. Do I hit present or do you hit present? I'll hit
Oh, I
present.
don't have it on my computer, but I can show it. Let's see if it'll work on the camera.
I can share screen from here. It says extra camera, video file, slides. I can share. No. Select a tab to share. Hang
So
on.
can you
Window?
see me
No, I
on here
can't.
now on the screen?
I can see you on here now. Yeah. So what's the where are we
So there's
where in
Sean. There's Sean and Ann here,
yeah.
and then the
Yeah.
guy that's looking out the window up there. I don't know
Yeah.
if you can really see it very well. Let me make it bigger.
I got oh wow.
Right.
Wow, that's quite cool.
So here's my question about that:
Yeah.
is why? Let me actually let me pull it up again. Why doesn't this look like a fireman? Why doesn't it look like a cook? Why doesn't it look like a
Yeah.
mechanic?
Yeah.
Why doesn't it look like a woman?
Yeah.
Why was it that we were there for 8 hours looking for a priest and couldn't find him? And as we
Yeah.
left, we took a picture and there's a priest in the window.
So is that the actual white collar that I can
Well, the thing about it is it's all very diffused, right?
it's
This could very well be pareidolia, but
it
even if it
yeah.
is
You
pareidolia,
can see the tree in the other window pane, I
yeah,
think, or something. Yeah.
even if it is pareidolia, how random is that?
Yeah.
How
I
come it
mean,
wasn't a fisherman up there in the window?
I know
Or,
that's great. That's great.
you know?
That's
So
great. Yeah, I love that. But I mean, for me, I've caught a fair bit on audio. Do you think that might have anything to do with clairaudience? Their extra senses, because I catch a heap of stuff on audio for some reason. Do you think some
so
people might attract that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
I think also it has a lot to do with the recording medium you're using, whether you're using tape or
yeah,
digital, and whether your
yeah.
digital is old or new. Because
Mine's old. Mine's
yeah,
old, but I like the hiss. Actually, I think there might be stuff that gets in the hiss.
right.
The white
So
noise.
yeah, because I have some audio recorders I will put down and put it next to one of those Panasonic. What is it? The P something. the old '90s Panasonic digital recorder that everybody's paying like $3,000 or $4,000 for now.
I
They
had an
went to like
ancient one. I had
yeah.
I had an ancient one. I think it's still in storage somewhere, but yeah. Now actually that brings me into what's in your actual toolkit, actually mentally and physically. So you use old and new school?
Yeah, I use a tape audio and
Yeah,
digital audio, and then I do tape video and digital video.
yeah. And you
Yeah.
use data loggers and stuff like that, and
Do I use what?
data loggers and stuff like that?
Yeah,
And
and I don't typically use any of the other stuff like the
yeah,
REM pods and the spirit
yeah,
boxes and all that
yeah,
stuff. I don't just because I can't explain the technology on
yeah,
how that is manipulated by the other side.
yeah,
And you know, if we were all doing the same experiments, it'd be pretty boring. So I let
yeah,
the people that want to use the REM pods and that stuff do that.
yeah.
I do very much different, and I look for evidence that I can collect in a normal manner.
Yeah. Now that brings me to now you've been an officer of the law for how many damn years? It's
It'll be 32 years in January. Sad.
jeez. Wow. No, it's not sad. Holy crap. I mean, you've done a lot. But yeah, how would you approach the scene of a haunting or the report of a haunting as a law officer, and how yeah, what's your approach? How does it differ from the regular ghost hunter investigator approach?
So, and you can get into a bunch of I will I will contradict myself multiple times when I explain what I do here. And
No,
the
I might
reason
get it. I
and
might. I have a big brain.
and the reason I say that is because I will say, if you're going to go investigate a spiritual situation or a haunting or some sort of thing like that, you should go in with no preconceptions of what to expect.
Yeah,
Um, and when you do that, then whatever presents itself will be that data or will be that experience or that piece
yeah,
of evidence.
yeah,
If you do a bunch of research on what has happened there before, the
yeah,
location, the experience, people's
yeah,
witness statements, their experience, you will carry that with you into that location, and
yeah.
expectations will be very high of what that
Via
is.
the VABs sort of thing. Now, how do you use psychology training, I dare say, in interviewing witnesses, and you would use law training in gathering evidence and so apparent evidence or and data?
Let me back up because
Oh, sorry,
there's
sorry.
that's all
I
right.
get a bit ahead. I get a bit
There
ahead.
there's multiple layers. So if you carry that stuff in there with you, it could manipulate what you expect. So you have these
Yeah,
two separate things.
yeah,
But if you're doing uh, um, a cold case like in law enforcement, you would
yeah,
want to do as much research before you ever stepped into that place.
yeah,
And so you collect all that research information, and then you would comb over that and remove what is unrelated to the actual act or whatever you're investigating.
yeah,
So, and I say that because I've had those experiences where I go to a place looking for a certain thing
yeah,
and I don't see that certain thing, like the priest at Lep Castle.
yeah,
Um, but had I not had that expectation of looking for the priest, and had I just gone there and allowed whatever was there to happen, I may
yeah,
have found something else. And that happened to me in Hong Kong. I
yeah,
was on Lantu Island and I was looking for a graveyard. I'm looking for a particular ghost at this old pirate fort, and this bird was
what?
was messing with me. What's that?
There's a pirate fort?
Yeah, on Lantu Island off of Hong Kong.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was looking for this particular ghost at this fort, and this little blue bird, kind of a bluish green bird, uh, just was right in front of me the whole time, jumping around on the ground, flying around, flying up into the tree, jumping back down. He was with me the whole time, just, cheeping and cheeping. And I'm
Oh,
like, "Hey, this is a really cool bird. Now I'm looking for the
oh,
ghost. Why does this bird bother me? I'm looking for the ghost." In Texas, we have birds called kildees, which are a little white bird, and if you are
oh,
walking through a field and they see you, they will act like their wing is broken, so they will try to draw you away from their nest.
oh, oh,
So I thought that's what was going on with this little bird,
yeah.
is he was trying to get me away from his nest or defend, his family or whatever. I don't know what he was doing. But I kind of blew him off, but he was there. I was there for a couple hours, and he was there the whole time, and then we left. Uh,
Yeah.
a few years later, I was reading, what the Earth Mother does at Lantu Island. She sends you a little blue bird as a message.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
and
good.
so dumbass Greg Lawson,
Oh,
ghost
that's great.
hunter
Oh,
ghost
ghost hunter
hunter
extraordinaire.
brought
The man
all
who
of
has
his
been and done everything.
yeah. He brought all of his, baggage with him. Instead of shutting his mouth and listening and
Yeah.
having the experience, he tried to force the experience to happen, and I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we have. Certainly, that's the biggest mistake that law enforcement officers make, in interviewing people, is they won't shut up. They won't just be quiet and let the person talk.
Yeah,
Um,
like me.
and
Like me.
and
I do that.
well, and you were saying, you were asking about interviewing.
Yes.
That's one of the things that I will get requests from, let's say, restaurants or bars or whatever. Hey, can you come to our bar and investigate and tell us our bar is haunted? Because we have this experience, and there's this, prostitute that used to live here when it was a brothel and this and that. And I don't do that because I can't, certify that your bar is haunted or
Yeah.
whatever. It's
Yeah.
very important that when you're investigating something, that you figure out what is the motivation of the person who wants you to do the investigation,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
go into that interview, and you try to figure out what their motivation is of having
Yeah.
you there. Are they really trying to understand the experiences that are happening, at this location, or are they trying to get you to certify their bar as haunted, right?
Yeah, like it might bring them money or attention or something like that. But
Yep.
do you think let's I guess let's while we're at this, let's talk first about a little bit about scopaesthesia because I finally did that post that you and I chatted about years ago about the sense of being stared at, scopaesthesia.
Right.
Rupert Sheldrake's thing.
Oh yeah.
And it's common in law enforcement, but it's not taught in schools. Now, why do you think that is?
Um, you know,
Like
most
it's an
I
acknowledged thing.
what's that?
People acknowledge it, so why isn't it taught, do you think?
So I think that has a lot to do with our teachers, in
Yeah,
school. It has a lot to do with our parents, and it has a lot to do with the
yeah,
influence that religion has on their upbringing.
yeah,
Um, most people, when I was growing up in the United States, most people were Christian, and of that, if you talked about ghosts, they would say, "Oh, there's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as monsters. You have a bad, dream. It's just a dream. Don't pay attention to that. The
yeah,
you know the monster in your closet or under your bed. There's no such thing as monsters. Don't worry
yeah,
about that. And
yeah,
so we're told from the time we understand how to speak and
yeah,
understand our language, to not pay attention to our instincts. We're
yeah,
we're we're told that constantly.
yeah,
Rely on evidence, rely on observation, be empirical about your data,
yeah.
and discount any kind of instinct, intuition, whatever that you have.
So
Now,
it's a VAB thing again, going back to your teachers who
sure,
teach in the academies,
yeah,
sort of thing.
those values, you don't. you shouldn't value your instincts as much as you do what's actually happening in front of you. And that's the thing is I give examples of don't ever trust what somebody is going to say. Trust what they do.
Yeah.
And I say that in law enforcement side because you will tell somebody to do something that's reasonable, like let me see your hands. And if
Yeah.
they don't show you their hands within a reasonable amount of time to that, they have
Yeah.
something else that's going on with them.
Yeah.
You know, they're thinking about how to get away, how to assault you, how to get out of whatever the trouble they're in, how to hide whatever it is in their hand,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So they'll go, "Oh yeah, 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 okay," you know, and they just keep talking. It's like, okay, you need to stop talking.
Yeah.
Let me see your
And
hand.
what else do you look at, like eye movements and things? I mean, I know people move their eyes in a certain direction when they're lying versus when they're telling the truth. So what you examine that sort of thing, and what else do you examine as a
You,
law enforcement officer investigating a haunting?
sure, you do that. I typically try not to do that too much, just because this person is trying to tell me their story, and I don't want them to think that
Yeah,
I'm interrogating them.
yeah.
But
But you can
uh,
tell when they're making things up sometimes.
You can,
Yeah.
but it has to do with a lot of different things, not because you can go on and Google, you know, how to tell someone is lying, and they
When
will
there's
come
something.
up with something like, you know, if they're looking up and to the right, they're trying to create something. If they're up and to the left, they're looking for something that happened. If they
Yes.
look down, you know,
Yes.
they're looking for a deception. They're, you know, there's all these different things, but something that if you talk to people that have interviewed people over decades,
Yes.
they will
I see that.
say none of that is true without the other.
Yes.
So it's not just the eyes, it's not just the inflection of the voice, it's not just the breathing, it's not just the way they're sitting or their posture or
Yes.
the way they cross their feet or where they're putting their hands or how they tilt their
Yes.
head. It's all of those things. Uh,
Yes.
and I worked a homicide one time that I had the main suspect in the room, and after 2 hours of talking to him, I realized this is a guy. He killed this girl. Um, there's no doubt in my mind because he is lying to me about everything.
Yeah.
Well, in context, he wasn't the guy that killed her. He was
Yeah.
lying to me about everything, but he was
Yeah.
lying to me about everything because he had a brick of weed in his car and he did not want me to find he didn't want me to find all the weed in his car. So he was lying about everything, lying where the car was, what, you know, I mean, just everything. So it very much has to do with the context that the person is lying in as well.
Yeah.
There are good articles out there that a lot of psychologists have written as far as you can't
Yeah.
make it through the day without lying 50 times.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
everything from just uh, just saying nice things that aren't necessarily true, but you just say them to to smooth over whatever it is.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it's very interesting on how our language and how our sociology and our culture kind of encourage lying. But there's
Yeah.
this gray area where all of a sudden the encouraged lying becomes, oh, you shouldn't have said that. You're lying about that. Well, I'm
Yeah.
also lying about the soup that you made. It was horrible, but I choked it down anyway because I didn't want to hurt your feelings, you know? So
Well, I hope you won't say that about my cooking when you ever get your ass over here. When you do. Now that brings me to what was I going to say? Past researchers whose work you admire, and I mean, I said to Beth the other week that we all model ourselves or base ourselves, cobble ourselves together off bits and pieces that we've read, people whose values and whose approaches we admire. Whose influence do you have? Have there been any influences?
yeah, there has Hans Holzer.
Ah, yes.
And there are people that say that he was absolutely full of crap. He made up a bunch of stuff, and he's not here. I can't prove that what they
I
say is
like
true,
right.
but I liked his methodology. And the reason I liked his methodology is we're looking for paranormal. People are
Exactly.
using normal things to look for paranormal, and that doesn't really equate to me. Um,
Yeah.
I'm using normal video cameras that pick up the electronic, the visual light spectrum. I'm using audio equipment that picks up the auditory spectrum per se, or the frequencies.
Yeah.
Um, those are natural things. The kraken, the giant squid, was a cryptid, was a monster, was a
Yes.
myth until they found it.
Until they found it and they killed it.
Right. So you look at
Yeah.
what are we really doing, and so it seems to me that people are already wired to make this connection. You already have the ability to do um, psychic intervention, I guess. And
Yeah.
so I like the fact that Hans Holzer had all this stuff, recorders, and
Yes.
he took meticulous notes and interviewed people, and he did all that, but he also used a medium uh,
Yes.
as
Because my
his
mum was a medium. I like that about him too.
yeah,
So
as
yeah.
as an intermediary, because if you're talking paranormal and you want to use a spirit box, well, the spirit box is picking up radio
Yeah.
transmissions,
Yeah.
and it's skipping over channels and
Yeah.
randomly landing on a channel
Yeah.
long enough to get one word out or two words out. And people say, well, the ghosts are able to get in the frequency and manipulate that and pick out these words to, create this communication. I'm like,
Yeah.
how does that
Yeah.
work? Because it happens if you just let it sit there and you're not asking any questions.
Yeah.
It does this, and you sit another one over and you ask it questions, and it does the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that is spirit communication.
Yeah.
I
And you
I get proximity things like with uh, a lot of the different instruments that are used as proximity alerts.
it's
Um,
it's like an
that
EDI meter
yeah,
sort of thing,
that
like things that
something
pick
is
up
there,
vibrations in the ground and all of that sort of thing.
right?
Yeah. Now, have you ever had, like, I call them WTF moments with those? I had one with the SB7, but it wasn't mine. It was someone else's. But I caught my first EVP in an old, criminally insane exterior wing of an asylum over here. And years later, I went to the same place and with another group of people, and one of the ladies there had an SB7 or an early one anyway.
Yeah,
And caught the exact same words in the same wing that I caught my first EVP in. So it's a WTF moment for me. So have you
right.
ever had one of those?
Yeah, I was in
Yeah.
Warwick Castle in Warwickshire, England.
Yeah.
I was there with MJ Dixon and Frank Sinelli and Duncan Dixon and a whole bunch of other people.
Yes.
But I was there with Frank, and we were doing a spirit box session,
Yes.
and we were in the kitchens in the like the sub basement of the castle,
Yeah.
and we had been there for 20 minutes or so, and Duncan Dixon was organizing this thing, kind of moving the different investigative groups around, and so he would show up from time to time just to see how everything was going. And so we were in this closed room, these kitchens, and the door opened, and somebody came in, and the door closed, and Frank says to the spirit box, or whoever was connecting through the spirit box, he goes, "Can you tell me who came in, who just came in?" And the
Yeah.
spirit box was like, Duncan. I have never in my life experienced anything like that,
I
Um,
love that stuff. I mean, I
it
really do.
it
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't that, it was Duncan. It was just
Yeah.
like,
I mean, for
wow.
me, it was the words "I'm sick." I heard it very clearly. It
Wow.
was the words "I'm sick," and I mean, the first AIDS patient was housed in the exterior wing. This was called J ward, and the first AIDS patient might have died there. I'm not sure now. I can't remember, but yeah, I caught "I'm sick"
Wow.
because it was a hospital wing, and it's a WTF moment for me.
Yeah.
Oh God, now, good Lord, bloody hell, oh, um,
What?
early historic cases that fascinate you, and why do they fascinate you?
Um, yeah, so when we say early,
Like
um,
not early, well before now, or early and current things that have got you going, or things that have caught your interest, and things that that's really sort of got you interested in what's happened and where and who to
yeah.
and where.
So the book that I just finished, just published a couple of months ago, was Messages from Mothman, and
Yes,
I always like the Mothman story, but I look at it and it's like, okay, there's pieces to it, right? There's some people that saw it, some gravediggers saw it,
yes,
some people out driving around
yes,
in the country saw it, some people in town saw it. Indrid Cold, the man that was kind of there at the same time, who talked to only one person, um, had this experience, and this big legend was made out of all of that, and it's all very interesting. And I was looking at, I was like, I love the Mothman idea. Lynn drug me out to West Virginia to go to Point Pleasant and go to the Mothman statue and all that, and it was very
yes,
interesting. And I've always kind of found it interesting, but I didn't really get off into it that much. When I started doing the research for the book, I started
yes,
looking at all these other experiences that people had had of similar creatures, these big, dark, winged creatures, red eyes, that sort of thing. And that was very interesting to me. But also, all of the other means that people receive messages. So the
yeah,
messages from Mothman is one thing we interpret as
yeah,
he's there to give us a warning that the Silver Bridge was going to collapse.
yeah.
And that's kind of where it came from. Some people believe, well, he was there to collapse the Silver Bridge. Well, I'm pretty sure we did that ourselves, parking all those cars on it. Uh, it's an old bridge. Things are heavier. The bridge is poorly built, and it broke. So it would lend the fact
Yeah,
that Mothman
yeah.
didn't
It's
destroy the bridge. He was there
yeah.
to tell us about it. He
Yeah, I
was
mean, it
warning.
was structural fault or something, and he was there to warn people. I was going to ask that. Did you think he was a good omen or a bad thing? And yeah, what other? Actually, I guess we could discuss what other things are. What do you believe in synchronicity?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think I've had a couple of events over the last week or so, but I won't talk about those. But have you had any synchronous events? And yeah, have you had anything that you
Yeah,
truly?
my events, are just the little random things. It seems to me that if there is a spiritual realm, if there, let's say, is whatever heaven is, or the other than being alive,
Yeah,
whatever. If we transcend death and we are something else or become something else,
yeah,
um, it seems to me that if that's true, that there are a
yeah,
set of rules in place. I don't know whether
yeah,
they're written down rules or whether they're just naturally occurring rules in the space time continuum, and this is just how it
yeah,
works. But there are little holes in there. So mom can't come back and say, "Hey, I'm here,"
yeah.
but she can 4 times in one day have people around you have a conversation about Kit Kat candy bars. You know, I've
Yeah.
lived on the planet over 50 years. I've never heard anybody having a conversation about Kit Kat candy bars. And within the week of my mother dying,
Yeah.
I'm listening to people talk about Kit Kat candy bars all
Yeah.
around me. Now, but is that synchronicity, or is that thing that happens when,
Is it a chance coincidence sort of
yeah,
thing?
or when you've never seen a pea green Jeep and you go and buy a pea green Jeep and you drive it off the lot,
And you start
and
seeing
on
them
your way
everywhere.
home, you see 3 pea green Jeeps.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
that?
That sort of thing. Yeah. I was going to ask, sorry, bit of coffee in my throat. What are your thoughts? What is the best? What is your? Do you have a pet hypothesis around ghosts, that sort of thing, or? And what's your strongest, in your belief? What's your strongest supporting evidence towards ghosts and cryptids and UAPs and everything? Have there been any cases that have really stood out to you that provide really strong evidence?
So when we say cases about something, what we're really talking about is an individual's experience with something,
Yeah,
because we
yeah.
don't have
I should say that experiences. I should say that. I shouldn't
we
say that. Yeah,
we don't have 20 people that were standing in one spot
yeah,
and watched this apparition appear out of the ground, stand there and tell us
yeah,
something. We don't have that. We have one person or maybe two,
yeah.
and there's always some other thing to it, right? There's always something else. We had the UAPs that Nimitz saw in the a few years ago, where the pilots actually flew around these things,
Limits?
which were very reminiscent of what you said earlier, Foo Fighters. Um,
Yes.
that that that's the closest I've seen to what World War II pilots used to say they saw, was like
Yes.
that little bitty thing. It wasn't. It was a shiny little thing. It wasn't like a big spaceship. It was
Yes.
something else.
A tiny thing. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
What's the Nimitz? Sorry, dear. Is that an aircraft carrier?
yes, yeah,
Yes.
and
Okay.
and so when we're looking at that, we have to look at individual experience and then assign credibility to it.
Yeah.
So, when I worked as a mental health officer for 2 years, I was the guy that they called out for suicide mediation, hostage
Oh,
negotiation, all
yeah.
that stuff for like SWAT teams.
Yeah.
And then when we weren't doing that, we were getting mental health warrants or mental health commitments for people
Yeah.
who are mentally ill. And so I got called out on a lot of people that said that they were abducted by aliens, said that they were possessed by spirits or demons, said that they had seen ghosts, said that they had,
Yeah.
CIA robots in their body,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff like that. And so when you go to an investigation like that, me as a cop going to an investigation where somebody is behaving strangely and they tell me this is what's going on, I have to assess value to their experience, and I have to evaluate them for their credibility. And most
Yeah.
cops would just go, they're crazy. I don't know, put them in the hospital, right?
No. No.
But
Yeah.
you want to do the investigation. You want to interview them, collect all the the
Yeah.
witness information you can from them, document that. It's not criminal. It's not going to go anywhere at that point.
Yeah.
And then you have to determine whether they're a danger to themselves or somebody else, and decide
Yeah.
whether you're going to put them in the hospital or not.
Yeah.
The point is, even if somebody is quote unquote crazy, it does not mean that they did not actually have that experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had I was very young. I was working as an assistant manager at a Pizza Hut in Rockdale, Texas.
I used to be, that was my first job as a pizza maker,
Yeah,
actually, when I was
yeah.
like 16.
That's a good way to start. Learn how to make pizzas.
Well, who doesn't like pizza?
That's right. And so I had there was a waitress that I worked with. She was probably 20 years old, something like that. I was 16, and she came up to me. The one of the waitresses was at the cashier checking some people out. There was a bunch of people in the dining area. The manager was gone. I was the assistant manager. There was a cook. He was back in the freezer. And
Yeah.
other waitress walked up to me and
Yeah.
kind of yelled, not real loud, but she said, "They're here." Real weird. And this is before Poltergeist, so she didn't get that
Yeah.
from the movie. Uh,
Yeah.
and she grabbed a hold of my hand and then just started she just locked up, just stood there like a statue
Yeah.
and made
Yeah.
this horrible face and was making this noise. And then she urinated all over herself.
Oh
And
no.
she's just standing there, and I'm trying to get her to move, but she is stuck. She is like a statue. She will not move.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to her, and I'm trying to get her to calm down. And people that are checking out at the cashier are looking over, going, "What the hell's going on here?" The
Wow.
cook comes out. He's like, "What's going on?"
Wow.
Anyway, it seemed like we were there for an hour. We were probably there for 2 minutes. And
Yeah.
then she kind of relaxed, and
Yeah.
she kind of came back to and looked at me, and I walked her to the back and set her down in a little chair, and she got a cigarette, and I went back out and I got the mop and I cleaned up
Yeah.
everything. And I went back and I talked to her, and she says, "Yeah, it happens all the time." And I said, "What
Yeah.
happened? What?" And she goes, "The aliens, they come and get me. They take me to the
Yeah.
spaceship, and they do all these things to me. They do all these horrible experiments to me, and then they put me back in my body."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What?" I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? You were here the whole time. She goes, "No, they take me up there. You think I'm there, but they take me up there."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh boy." So I called the manager. The manager calls the general manager. General manager says, "Take her over to the hospital and have
Yeah.
her checked in."
Yeah.
So we took her over to the hospital. They checked her in. They let her go. She went home that day. A couple of days later, they sent her to a hospital in Austin. They did an
Yeah.
MRI, and she had a big scar on her brain. And they diagnosed her with epilepsy. Now
Oh.
my question is,
Yeah.
did something happen to her as a child that created this scar on her brain that gave her epilepsy,
Yeah.
or is the abduction by the aliens and the experiments they're doing on her causing the scar?
And I swear to God, I read somewhere that epileptics are more prone to paranormal experiences
Yeah.
or something like that.
No, that's absolutely true. Yes.
Yes. So was
So
it that or was it something else? That's
so it's the question, a rational, logical, non-believing, non-religious, atheist psychologist, doctor, a physician would say something happened to her as a child. Either she was born this way or she had a head trauma that caused this scar, and the scar is creating a condition that manifests itself as an
yeah.
epileptic seizure.
Yeah.
That's what, and most people would just shrug their shoulders and agree to that. But you
Yeah.
can't prove a negative, right? So
Yeah.
you can say that, but you can't prove that she wasn't abducted by aliens and the scar created based
Yeah.
on their experiments. I
Yeah. And I
don't
mean,
think that's what it was. I'm assuming it was something natural, but I won't discount the fact that I sat there and watched. And I've seen plenty of people that suffer from epilepsy have seizures, and you look at them when they're having their seizure. You could imagine 200 years ago, not understanding medicine, uh,
exactly.
only knowing what you're told at your church by your parents
Exactly.
and your peers, that this person is possessed by the devil.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we
You know
had a sad incident over here. It was a non-paranormal one. We had a 95-year-old lady in a nursing home. She had dementia or Alzheimer's or something, and she got tasered.
Yeah.
She was holding a knife, but she couldn't move very fast.
What
She
in
was
the
95, and she
world?
got tasered, and she died.
Why in the world would a cop taser somebody and some
Well, I
poor?
mean, that's the thing, it can be misinterpreted, and I guess he might I don't know if he was religious or not, but people can misinterpret that in a situation in a place where there might have been something happen, I guess, or
Well, I
some
mean, that's happened in the United States. Grown men, big guys, tasering, a 120-pound, 70-year-old woman. It's like,
oh,
dude, what are you doing? You know?
yeah. Yeah, I
But
mean,
but
she
that's
didn't harm
one of the
anybody.
problems.
She
That
couldn't
that
harm anyone.
yeah, that's one of the problems today is police are so bound by protocol. They go step one, step two, step three. If somebody is doing this to you, you
Yeah,
use your taser. If somebody does this to you,
yeah.
you use your hands. Or
And
they
and why
just
the whole shoot to kill approach? Why that? Why not shoot to wing or something?
yeah.
Shoot at the knee or the arm, or why shoot to kill? I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of mental health issues, and I think that mental health first aid training is important, as I
It's
said to
really,
Beth.
really important. Yeah.
And so you've done that. How could you tell us how we could go about that?
Go about what? I'm sorry.
Mental health first aid training, like
Oh, well,
how did
there's
you go
lots
about
of
yours for
there's a
overseas?
yeah,
For
there's a ton of stuff on YouTube about that, whether it's just, psychologists just walking
Yeah,
people through it. There's a whole lot of good organizations out there that are doing in Texas, we have a thing called TCOL. It's a Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, and,
yeah,
they're the regulatory agencies for how we're taught, and they mandate things through the legislature as far as mental health awareness, mental health certification, that sort of stuff.
yeah,
So, I mean, there we have specific training that we go through, and I'm sure in Australia the police go through that as well. It's just
yeah.
for the most part, cops just aren't taught. They don't go through a lot of training. People think they do, but they don't.
That's so sad. It really
In
is because
Texas, it requires 720 hours of training to be a police officer. That's
wow.
it. A
Oh,
a a hairstylist has about 3 times that amount.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. And oh God. Now let's go on to I've got your book here. Good Lord, let's go on to the way media makes us misinterpret things. You've got a chapter called Beyond the chapter 14 in your book, Beyond the TV Paradigm. I mean, how does the media affect our interpretation of a location, and where has it gone wrong? Sort of
Right.
thing.
So, a lot of these
This
go
seems like sensationalization of everything. They ramp it up to the max.
right. Yeah, a lot of the shows, I mean, there's value there's shock value, right, for
Yeah,
entertainment
yeah,
in, scary movies and stuff like that.
yeah.
But when the paranormal shows started coming out, like In Search Of was like, the first
Yes,
serious kind of delving off into the paranormal. Um,
yes.
but they didn't really show,
Heard of that. I think
in the
Randy was on it.
investi
Yeah,
what's that?
yeah. I think Randy Liebeck was on that. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They didn't really show, the investigation type.
Yeah,
They did the research and they kinda told the story. And then
yeah,
we get into, Ghost Hunters and a
yeah.
lot of the other ghost shows, that, you need a K2 meter, you need a black T-shirt,
Yeah,
and
yeah, like the chapter in your book at the intro that Jeff wrote, Jeff Bellinger.
that's
Yeah,
right, that's right.
what is it? What does he say? I've got it here. EMF meter check, audio recorder check, night vision camera check, cool black T-shirt, awesome acronym team name like POO or the Paranormal Observers Organization. Yeah,
Yeah, poo. Yeah. And so, the media itself doesn't take any of the paranormal stuff seriously. They
yeah,
usually, if they have something like that, they'll put a little cute, little quick, quirky twist at the end of it.
yeah,
But uh, the way a lot of the TV shows are made, or they're made by the producers and
yeah,
the guy that sits down and does the editing. So he'll
yeah,
take out a whole bunch of stuff that they don't think will
yeah.
get good ratings, and they only put in the stuff that gets good ratings.
Yeah, because
Um,
basically sometimes, I mean, it can be as boring as watching paint dry.
oh,
So
it's horrible. I doing paranormal investigation is just, oh, maddening. You talk about waste of time just sitting there. I like Frank Sinelli's idea of, he goes, if you were a ghost, would you want to go and talk to the people that are sitting around a tape recorder with some blinky lights asking you about how you died and did it hurt
yeah,
and do you feel bad? or would you
Yeah.
rather be around a bunch of people that are cracking open bottles of wine and beer,
Exactly, and
and
having a good time.
playing a little bit of music and telling some ghost stories?
Yeah.
Would you rather hang out? Which who do you want to hang out with? Right?
Well, I mean, that sort of goes with my thinking. I mean, I use ear cues. I dress in costumes and I use cigars and glasses of whiskey or brandy or something
Yes.
like that. Come in, have a drink, sit down, have a
Yes.
chat.
Love it.
It's like a let us into your home sort of thing. But where have we gone wrong, do you think? Is it just that people are in this just for fun?
Um,
Actually, I'll leave you to answer this, dear. I've got to use the bathroom for like a minute. It's
sure.
only 10 steps down the hall, but I'll leave you to answer this while I go. The
No,
coffee's here.
go ahead.
Yeah, the coffee's here.
I'll
Take away.
I'll I'll tell. So we have, I believe that in the paranormal, those that conduct investigations and stuff, that we have gone wrong by not doing our due diligence of learning how to do the stuff, understanding the scientific method, but also being able to deviate from the scientific method. I go to these events and there will be 500 people there that are paranormal investigators, and 32 of them will buy my book. Not saying that you need to buy my book, but it's just interesting on how many that actually go outside and learn, actually
I'm back.
spend the time on themselves to learn and become better at what they do. So I think that's the biggest mistake that we have as a paranormal society is our failure to continue to learn, read,
Yeah.
and
Research,
teach
research,
each
research, read,
other
read.
for what we're doing.
And I mean, I think with some of the field, I think there's a lack of unity, and it really pisses me off, to be honest.
Oh, there's a huge lack of unity. But I mean, if you look at religion, there's a huge lack of unity. The military, there's a huge lack of unity.
Yeah,
And I think I think that's a human condition.
yeah,
People are very, very territorial.
yeah.
Um,
I know.
I've gone in, I've been invited in to be a guest speaker at different places, and I've had people irritated because I was invited and they were not.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. Everybody has different perspectives on things.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
get
and
why people have issues with one another. I just don't get that. But I mean, that's me. It's just I try to be like I always say try to be like a capybara, just chill in the midst of it all. And they just
well,
get along with everything. And they're cute.
I know the TV show that the part that I was able to view of you. I wish that would have been a TV show. That would have been
It's actually
fantastic.
coming out shortly. It's actually coming out shortly, I
Thank
think.
God. Yeah,
They've got
good.
the entire series done, but that's the final one. But it's coming out shortly. The one at Castlemaine Jail.
I loved it. Yeah, I loved your
That's
presentation. I love your presence. Is great.
it's the way I've sort of always done it. I talk in their language, I use their terminology of the time, sort of thing, and I use era cues.
Yeah,
Music, I tried to do a waltz experiment here at the hotel one time. I tried to get Alex to dance with me, but he wouldn't. He just fled for the other room.
yeah. But so yeah, I think
Was
that's
years ago.
we're our own best enemies by not
Yeah,
doing good research, by not doing good
I
experiments, and by
know.
not constantly learning what everybody else is doing and reading
And
books.
developing and collaborating and changing and,
Yep.
who knows what we can do if we grow. And good
But I know
Lord,
that the
yeah, go
people that I end up working with, we all work very well together. It was when we were out at Tombstone, I had a couple of people say, "Oh, Greg, I thought you would want to do more experiments," and I'm like, "You guys are doing your experiments, and I'm on the peripheral. I'm on the outside, kind of
on.
observing everything that's going on. I
Yeah,
can't observe everything that's going on if I'm sitting in the middle of everybody."
yeah,
And I think that we all need to be doing and be assigned a little something different. Um,
yeah,
what's
exactly.
funny is like in typical SWAT teams, the team will have a bunch of very experienced people, and they get one or two not so experienced people in. And what do they do with that person? They put them in the what we call back of the stack. They put them
Yeah.
in the back of the line of people that are going inside the house, right?
Yeah.
So you put them in the back because they don't know what they're doing. Put them in the back. Well, you probably need the most experienced person in the back because that's where the
Like in
ambush
a wolf
comes
pack,
from.
like in a wolf pack where the older ones are at the back.
Yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. You don't want to stick the least experienced guy in the back because he's not going to be watching behind him. He's going to be
Yeah.
looking forward, looking what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
That's not what you should be doing in the back. So
Yeah.
I kind of do what we call fill and flow. When I see that there is work to be done, I will go to that work. Or if I see
Yeah.
the position that needs to be filled, I go to that position regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and it gives me a better perspective of what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm not just sitting with the other 5 people staring at a red light, hoping
Yeah.
it'll, or a green light, hoping it'll turn red.
Yeah, well, you have an idea of what's going on elsewhere and the
Right.
entirety of the investigation, or the stakeout, as an overnight one it's called. It's
Yep.
you gave me that term, I think. A stakeout. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sort of thing, the entirety, the scope of the investigation, I think it is really good. Taking in what's going on everywhere. But yeah, God, good Lord, let's get on to actually, good Lord, it's hour 35 already. Can we talk just briefly about telepathy, Schumann resonances, Harabin's frequency? That's named after the medium Sean Harabins. And when he tuned in with sitters at their same frequency, he would get better results. And I think it had something to do with the Schumann resonances being in the background.
That would make sense. I don't know much about that.
Yeah. I
I
think it was Michael Persinger and Stanley Coren did it
okay.
years ago. Yeah, the God Helmet guy.
Oh, the God helmet guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've read a little bit about that.
One of
when I
my
was doing
favorites.
what's that?
It's one of my favorites.
When I was doing the research for the Mothman book,
Yeah.
I touched a little bit on telepathy just um, because there was some good um, examples that would relate to also receiving messages.
Yeah.
But I really don't know that much about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think they used some sort of electrodes on his head and on the sitter's head, and when they tuned in at an equal frequency, because the Schumann resonance is the baseline frequency of the Earth. It starts at the baseline frequency, which is 7.83 hertz, I think. So I find it quite fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like the thought of that with EVP too, because Persinger did this great lecture called No More Secrets. And he hypothesizes that maybe the Schumann resonances, there's like a whole heap of brains floating around out there somewhere, a whole heap of minds that we can connect to. And I really like that thought. And if we had no more secrets, then would there still be wars? Would people still hate one another if they could see into what was in the other guy's heart, that sort of thing.
Right.
I mean, now, good Lord, let's get on to podcasts, nonfiction books, and your book. We've talked about a little bit of your book. We've only got, Jesus Christ, 23 minutes to go. Oh God, it's so late over there. I'm sorry. Podcast, Facebook pages, recommended reading lists, resources, that sort of thing. And then, yeah.
So you want my recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll shut up now.
All right. So there's a lot of good podcasts out there right now. I love Astonishing Legends. I think that they're great. They tell a great story. They
Yeah.
really take a really deep dive, and their podcast can be 2-3 hours long, or they could go into a series of 2 or 3 in a row. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy them.
Yeah.
I'm on with I'm on with Dave Schrader. I'm on Paranormal 60 News on
Yes.
Wednesdays.
Good
He
Lord. Now,
has
how many others are you on? There's
I
only
don't know.
two.
That's the regular one I'm on. The his normal podcast, the Paranormal 60, is on Mondays, and he
Yeah.
will bring people in, standard interview kind of show, and they will talk about specific things that they're working on. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really good broad perspective on what people are doing. As far as like deep dive stuff, there's such a lot of good. Well, there's some junk books out there too, but there's a lot of
Yeah.
good books out there that
Yeah.
talk
Like, what have
about.
you read that's really stuck with you? What have you read that you've really, sort of stayed in your mind? Like for me, it was yours and the ghost studies and Steve's books and Kel's.
The ghost studies.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
I read a lot on more history than I do on paranormal.
yeah.
And because I think everybody, Rosemary Ellen Guiley had some really good uh,
Yes.
books on that. The Gin, I really enjoyed that because it provides a separate perspective on what ghosts could possibly be.
An Eastern perspective sort of thing.
Right. And are the ghosts that people experience, are they really ghosts, or are they a time slip from somebody else that we actually know and we're just getting a little vision through the veil there? Or are they the Gen and they're just tricking us, saying that they're ghosts because they think they're funny,
And I
that they're
mean,
messing with us?
do you think that if someone from the East and someone from the West, if they walked into one location, is there a possibility that they might see a different ghost? That the people
Right.
from the East might interpret the ghost as looking humanoid, but sort of grotesque, whereas people from the West might see it as something else, like the sheet. I think Steve Parsons mentioned the burial shroud with the top
Right.
knot and the
Yep.
eyes cut out where the pennies were put.
That's
So do you
right.
think people would see a different ghost?
So yeah, and that's that thing. It kind of we're going full circle now back to our assumption, beliefs, and expectations. Um,
Exactly.
is
Their
whatever
thoughts.
this thing, if this thing is shrouded in the electromagnetic spectrum, and somehow it's coming through,
Yes.
the only way that we're able to interpret it is based on our own knowledge, because we're going to receive this broken up light spectrum come in, and then we're going to have to create something in our mind. And
Yes.
it's very well proven that if something is missing in a visual spectrum, that our brain will fill it in. I don't know if you've ever done any of those little tests. You can go online and look at visual tests, and
Yeah.
they tell you to
Yeah. I
stare at
have.
one spot. You can make the little white dot go away, or the
Yeah.
white dot appears everywhere else.
I've
So
done a few of those.
yeah, is that what's happening? And would someone from China, and someone from India, and someone from the United States interpret a ghost in a different way based on their expectations?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really good possibility, just because people talk about, well, we use the scientific method to do our ghost hunting. Well, no,
Yeah.
you don't. No, you don't. It doesn't have
Yeah.
anything.
The
Um,
scientific method. Well, explain that to anyone. I mean, I know it, but explain it to anyone else that's listening. I can't see anyone. My apologies. I really can't. I haven't seen comments. But yeah, explain scientific method, layman's terms to
so
people
the
that might not.
scientific method isn't just one thing; it's a philosophy, and it's a philosophy based on you construct your experiments based on repeatability.
Yeah, rinse and
So
repeat sort of thing.
yeah, so there's a lot of people that don't study science that say it's step one, two, three, four. Now that's not what it is. It's a philosophy on how to have repeatability. And
Yeah.
in the paranormal, and let me clarify this. There is no repeatability. There
Exactly. There's random
doesn't.
events sometimes. But
So
with
if you
yeah,
think you're gonna use the scientific method, you really don't know what you're talking about as far as that
yeah.
goes.
I mean, with
Um,
repeated hauntings, there might be they call it the stone tape theory, but of course it's the place memory theory. So it might be
right.
that.
Right.
That might explain that. So, but we don't know.
It's
That's
something outside of the paranormal. I mean, outside of the scientific method, put it that
yeah,
way. Something very, very much different. And so, if that's the case, and we're all flawed humans and we're interpreting this information, whatever this is,
yeah,
um, our brain is putting something together to try to make sense of it.
yeah,
That's how we have our experience.
yeah. It's how we interpret things. Good Lord. Oh, what have we gone to? Let's throw a couple of wild questions out because I've only got like a quarter of an hour to go. Do you think that there can be places underwater that can be haunted?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been there.
How cool. And do you
Yeah.
think there's a possibility that we can re-haunt a house, as in people with psi talent that might go in there? Can we re-haunt a house, reactivate a dormant one?
Yeah.
As in
I think so. And I
as in
think
the
that's what
whole movie Rose Red, that sort of thing.
Rose Red is a perfect example. I love that
I
movie.
love that movie.
Yeah.
And The
That,
Haunting, and The Haunting of Hill House, and all of
yep.
that.
Yeah, that would make sense. So there are some Indian burial grounds close to my house, and imagine if in this area the anthropologist said that there was probably a population between 500 and 1,200 people that lived in this same location for probably around 800 years.
Wow.
So if they're living to an average age of 40, how many
Yeah.
dead bodies do we have right there on that property?
Yeah.
Thousands, right?
Yeah.
So nobody's been on that property for 200 years or
Yeah.
150 years or so. And the property is completely isolated. They don't use it for anything. Nobody goes hunting on it. They don't run cattle. They don't do anything on it.
Yeah.
And then the county finds out that this land is there, and they end up buying all that land from the private landowners, and they fence it all off. And then
Yeah.
I have access to it,
Yeah.
and I go out there, and that's one of those things is all these people have been there at peace for hundreds of years. And does the reintroduction of humans, would that create a haunting?
Yeah.
Or were the hauntings there all the time? There were
Yeah.
just no humans there to watch it. It's if the tree falls in the
In the forest is nobody.
forest. Yeah.
Well, of course it falls, but we're not there.
So yeah, if we don't have the observation, we don't know.
Yeah.
But it would make sense that,
But does us seeing it give it power, sort of
yeah.
thing? Yeah.
So the question is does our energy, the energy that we bring into a location,
Exactly.
somehow invigorate that location, or um, wake up whatever energy that's already still there, that's just at this point become bored because they don't have anybody to interact with, and they just go to sleep or whatever they do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it would make sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially if you have a large group of people with different talents. But I mean, it could maybe, from my mind, go into the whole 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing, like, do
Right.
we see someone else's experience? Is
Right.
it therefore not a ghost? But I don't know. That's just a wild theory. Now, I have to ask you, the underwater haunting thing, you said you'd been there. Where was that, and what was your experiences, or what are your thoughts in where did that?
Well, I've dove a lot of wrecks. I've dove wrecks off of North Carolina coast, off the Texas
Yeah.
coast, in the Middle East, in the Red Sea. Probably, probably the creepiest, most weird one I ever dove was up in Alaska. Um, it was the Princess Sophia, or
Okay.
some people say Sophia, but the way they pronounced it was Sophia.
Wow.
If anybody that would be listening to this podcast, look that up.
That's
It is
cool.
horrific what happened to those people.
That's
Um,
cool. But,
they
so
were they
not
were
cool,
le-
but yeah, go on.
yeah, they were leaving out of Alaska to go down to the lower 48 states. I think they were on the way to either Washington or California.
Yeah.
and they left, and it was, foggy, and the captain was a jackass and wanted to make some money, want to make extra money. So he was taking a chance, driving too fast coming out of there. And
Yeah.
he ran aground,
Yeah.
and the ship was stuck aground for a couple of days, and all these other ships came to rescue them. But the captain believed that there wasn't enough damage done on the ship, and he was just waiting. Actually, it wasn't a couple of days, day and a half or so,
Yeah.
waiting on the tides to turn to back off of the reef.
Yeah.
And so he refused to allow any of his passengers to leave because if they
Oh,
left, he would be losing that money.
yeah. Oh no.
And when the tide came up, he backed off the reef, ripped the
Oh,
belly of the ship open, and it sank in about 7 minutes. It rolled
oh,
over. And when I dove
good God.
uh, the ship was only in 40 to 50 feet of water when I dove it,
Yeah.
but the ship had completely collapsed. In other words, you can
Yeah.
imagine a ship and it's laying on its side and
Yeah.
it rusts
Yeah.
and it just collapses in on itself. And all those
Yeah.
bodies are still in there. Um, and
Yeah.
so there are multiple ghosts, men and women in white that people see in the fog all around that area and on the beaches, bodies washed ashore. I think the only, I think there was one survivor. I think there was a dog that actually
Oh.
survived.
Oh.
He was paddling around out there and they picked him up, but
Oh, the
everybody
poor
else,
thing.
yeah, everybody else died.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me of, oh, God, that reminds me of how weird this whole thing is. I mean, I talked about this our ship over here, the Alkimos, a few years ago, and I'm the interviewer now. It's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
It's so weird. But
that's
I had
very
I
creepy.
was on your show years ago, but yeah, that's really way cool. Oh, good God. Now it's 10 minutes to go, dear. Um, what have we got now? Let's see. What's your favorite non-fiction ghost movie of all time? Fiction ghost movie of all time, I should say. Just to wrap it up, and then we'll get you to plug yourself and all of that, because people
So
need to know where to find you. And yeah,
I really loved, I think it was called Ghost.
Patrick Swayze.
No, it wasn't that one. Oh, what is it? Ghost Story. It had Fred Astaire in it.
Oh, I've heard of that. I've watched that.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a
That was based on an
really,
old Peter Straub book, wasn't it?
I
Ghost
don't
Story.
know. I
And he
don't
did
know,
another
but it
one. I
was
can't remember, but it
that,
was based on an old book.
that's a great one. And I really liked Ghost Ship. It's not
It was
great
gory. I
looking.
love the opening scene.
Yeah. Yeah. The opening scene is amazing, right?
That sticks. That sticks
Yeah.
in you. Yeah,
But I like the premise of that evil perpetuating itself with
yeah,
that gold. It was just kind of going,
yeah.
and I thought that was a really really interesting take on it. But yeah, Ghost. I think Ghost Story has to be my favorite. And
And
it's old school classic, you know.
I love the others, and
Oh, the other, yeah, no, the others is right up there with Ghost Story.
Nicole Kidman. Sorry,
Yeah,
the others, and oh God, what else? So many. The Changeling, George C. Scott. That's a great movie.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those are great. And Afterlife. I saw that recently. I cried at the end.
Afterlife. I don't know if I've.
Ghostbusters, the actual sequel, not the
Oh,
other. Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
It's
I should.
gorgeous. It's
I
a
should.
gorgeous movie. Yeah, but now, oh, good God. 8 minutes to go. I should let you go, dear. It's like 11 o'clock over there, isn't it?
No,
What
it's
time is it?
2:51
Oh, it's the afternoon over there.
in the
Oh,
afternoon.
right.
Yeah.
You're America. We're going on GMT.
What time is
That's
it there?
it's 10 to 7 here. The sun's come up and it's raining. Well, the sun hasn't come up, but it's light. It's raining.
But you're October 16th, right?
Yeah, we
See,
are.
I'm October 15th at
Yeah.
2:51. So we're doing like a time portal. Yeah.
Well, I'm from the future.
Well,
It's great.
remember this. So next time we do this, you can come on. We could I mean, it's only 3 p.m. for me right now, so,
I
you can
mean, God, I
push
mean,
yours to later.
I just load up with caffeine anyway. I don't care. I've been up at 5 for Ash, and I think 5 for Beth and Kev, or 6 for Beth and Kev.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with that stuff.
Okay.
I don't
Alright.
care anytime. I mean, I'm big on coffee and I can talk a mile an hour, so it doesn't matter. But I want
Mhm.
to do a panel at the end, get us all together here and there. I can only have 4 at the moment, but just get us all together here and there to talk about what we've talked about and what we might have learned from one another. And yeah, but I God, my dear, I should let you go. I really should.
Yeah.
I feel
Alright.
bad. You've got quality time to spend with Lynn and Frank. And what's the dog's name? I'm sorry.
Saki.
Saki. That's gorgeous. You've got quality time to spend with those guys. But God, tell us now where to find you, Paranormal Detective, Paranormal 60, where else?
Yep, you can find me at, greglawson.org. That'll take you to theparanormaldetective.com website. I'm on all my books are on Amazon. You can look up Greg
Yes.
Lawson and then whatever
Yes.
the books
Fiction and
are.
nonfiction. Now the zombie books. Yes, of course.
Yeah. And I have a channel on YouTube. I haven't posted anything for a while. I've been super busy.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm trying to concentrate more on writing books and doing some filming projects and stuff. So yeah, that's where you can
Yes,
find
that's
me.
great. Great, great. Oh God, now I should let you go.
All right.
And I've it's the coffee's gone through me again, so I should let you go, but thank you so much. It's been ages since we talked,
I
and I
know.
hope you don't mind my bugging you here and there with the odd weird question, but
Love it.
I'm
No,
I'm
I
just
love
like that. I love it too. I love our chats. I've missed them.
me too.
But thank you so much, and I'll talk to you again shortly, dear.
Okay, Kat.
And have
Thanks.
a good afternoon.
You too.
Okay, I will. Have a
All
good
right.
one. Bye.
Bye-bye.